Hey everyone, I'm just going to show progress on my RPG, and there's been a lot of changes. You'll notice that I added in another action bar. The action bar is set up, this is sort of like a utility action bar, and my idea is that you can only have 20 abilities, which I feel like it's kind of like Guild Wars 2, where you kind of choose your abilities, but in this case, like, it's 20 abilities, not like 5, because I feel like that's kind of a happier medium. But alright, so all of the abilities are now functional. You can actually see I have all kinds of new functionality like in place. So like Pacify will only work when the target is casting and stuff like that. You'll notice that I also have the mini map. Implementation is not in there yet. The same thing with the chat window. You type stuff in, but it doesn't replicate over the network yet. So that there's a lot of stuff still left to do. Now you'll notice the party system. This is the last thing I did uh, before I'm gonna pretty much pack everything up before going to live in my new place. Um, so I'm gonna be gone for a little while. The party system. Let's see, castle. Right. Now you notice that if I have a friendly target, it's a public party system. So when people are fighting something and it's trying to figure out the best way to describe it, party list automatically populates. All right, so this guy here, he's a bad guy. He's evil. But I have a couple of party, NPCs that are on my side, and I can select them this way. There's a guy down here as well, right? It's just kind of fun to do the testing with these. So if it's somebody that I know is like, oh hey, I want to keep him on the list. Well, I run out of range after I pin him to the top of the list. He'll always be there or in the zone. So it's a really, really, really easy way to group with people. But it also means too that like when let's say like a world boss or something like that spawns outside the city, or there's some kind of dynamic event, um, other people aren't like ignored. They're not they're not just like everybody soloing. This actually automatically makes a group on the fly, and you can keep whoever you want, uh, just like that. It's just a different way to approach the same thing, and to me, it's the dynamic world events uh, that are my favorite type of way to level. Except they haven't really been done very well in MMOs. Um, Guild Wars 2 has done the best example, but when you think about like questing in Final Fantasy 14 or World of Warcraft, those quests are primarily solo content. It actually kind of bugs me that these games, big chunk of these games, are actually solo. Like a lot of people will be like, "Oh, you were playing an MMO. You're supposed to be grouping with other people." Not really. Actually, you're kind of punished. When it comes to questing, get from an NPC the exclamation point and then turning your quest. That shit is solo. And if you try to do it with other people, one person will have the quest done, somebody might not have it, somebody's for one reason or another, or somebody doesn't get credit. It's just endless fucking garbage, and it's just a giant nightmare. So like, I kind of feel like having dynamic party system where you can keep people on it, uh, and making it so that world events are sort of combined with that same idea of having quests be a much better way to tackle it. Of course, I'm not a huge fan of just grinding world events either, because those get monotonous. So there's a different way to go about it, but I won't go into that for now. So you'll notice that along with being able to pin people on my party list dynamically, I also have enemies. Now, this is a little bit interesting situation because um now a group of 4 bad guys shows up, they're on your list, and in PvP, like in something like Arena or any kind of situation where now all of a sudden you need to be really paying attention because this guy might be casting something that's going to hurt somebody, might be a really nasty move or something like that. You can actually see, okay, yeah, I put damage over time effect on him, and he might end up having a buff. Like here's a buff here that Medica. I'll go over what all of the do. Basically increases your healing received by a certain amount, and then I might realize that this guy over here, uh, who just died and respawned up there, uh, might have like Medica on him or something. And I want to prevent that. So the defender class will typically have the ability to dispel um, positive effects on targets. So I'm kind of also approaching the entire class system. I'm going to have to be a little bit more organized if I'm going to go into all the details of this. But so what you're seeing right now is the party system, the ability to select other people, cast bar. If you'll notice that you can actually watch cast bars dynamically uh, going on other people on the party and stuff like that. So like this guy here, yeah, you see he sees that I have a refresh on me right now, and he can stop that. Currently, the select nearest target, nearest enemy, will select stuff that's under the ground, so it actually ends up selecting the guy that's down here. I can fix that though. But so you can actually see like what somebody is casting. I'm gonna cast something that takes a little bit more, and you see fireball. Try to get something a little slower. Combustion. Oh, he's casting combustion. You don't want that. It does a lot of damage. Then it reapplies combustion, causes a high damage explosion, and it reapplies burn on all of the targets. So we have all of this going right now. One thing that when you're on your own list, if you're by yourself, you'll disappear. So like if I run off into a corner, notice how there's nothing on the list. But as soon as I run in, as soon as there's one person uh, on my party list, then I'm also on my own list. That's that's just something that makes it easier when you're being a healer or something like that. 'Cause everybody's going to have responsibilities when it comes to things. So um, basically, the healer will be watching the yellow or the red, the green bar on the character plate, but a um, a support class will be watching the yellow bar, and he's going to be making sure that that stays full because support classes are the ones that make sure that everybody has full SP and positive party buffs and stuff like that. While defenders are more about controlling damage and swapping HP from yourself to the other and putting like damage shields on. Defenders are more about controlling damage. Healers are about replenishing damage, and um, support is about replenishing SP and making sure that everybody can continue go like re- recharging batteries. And that's the way it works. Everybody will have their own like tools to self replenish themselves and stuff like that. But in a party atmosphere, that's pretty much how that's going to work. So the defender is always going to be trying to make sure that people are not taking damage. Healers are going to be replenishing damage, and support's going to make sure that everybody has the energy to be able to do that, while also providing positive buffs. So um, that's my idea on the Trinity with this. It's a different take on the same thing. It's a bit different. And I don't have any other classes at the moment, but you have stuff like Medica. It increases healing potency on the target. So uh, when you have Medica on you, healing is buffed pretty well. But it also has a move called Benediction, which will actually, it's like a high cost, high potency single target heal that will actually remove the Medica status from the target, and you'll see 114, which is an awful lot. Now the numbers right now are kind of skewed because the these characters are level 10 right now, but they have no armor. I'm totally balancing around all of those things, and I'll show how the base stats work right. All right, so the first thing I want to mention is the reason why I was showing everything not in the editor the first time is because in the editor there's a weird bug where any of these 3D like widgets that are supposed to be floating over the characters' heads is behaves completely different when you're in the editor. But if you package the game, it works correctly. It's still marked as experimental, so whatever. But I just wanted to kind of get the first impression. These are not like this when you're actually playing. All right, so in the editor, I can go over the character stats. So I have one base character, which all of the characters are derived from. And this one guy here has all of the scripting on him. Notice he has this big volume around him. The volume is used to determine, when to show nameplates, when to add people to your target list, anybody who's around you is inside of this, and anytime this list changes, it updates, and that determines, like, you can see damage numbers and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's in place. All right. Anyway, the base stats that are currently in place right now, because I have the exponents for like different classes have different exponents for every level is multiplied to get your base stats by an exponent. Um, so the stats work like this: power is your damage capacity. Determination is for support and healing. Vitality is how much health you have. Agility is how much SP you have. I don't have you don't roll misses. There's no accuracy. It never usually ends up being very fun, and in a PvP environment, it pretty much never even matters unless you have some kind of an ability like something that makes it so that you're really hard to hit. Rogues usually have those kinds of abilities where they become unhittable for a while. Aside from that, I usually don't find rolling a miss to be very entertaining, so I'm just not even going to bother with that. Armor is your damage mitigation, and currently right now, what we are looking right now is the stack for rolling damage. Anytime somebody modifies your hit points, goes in through this. So I determine if it was a critical based on your uh, your crit chance, and I have all of these stats are hooked up currently right now. So armor or damage mitigation, your armor is your level times 16, and that allows you to get up to a damage mitigation of 75%. So if you're level 1 and you can get 16 armor, you're like a god. You're going to be like ridiculously like stacked. This is sort of how World of Warcraft does their armor and damage mitigation. But this is pretty much how I set this up. I'm going to end up making a lot of videos just going over how how everything comes together. But I'm going over like the main uh, things to kind of show off like what's in place currently. So one thing that's kind of amusing, the armor damage mitigation system from World of Warcraft is that the same armor you have on and then you level up, that armor actually uh, gets weaker because now you need better armor in order to get the same mitigation. It's just one of those things like you never even know it really actually works that way, but it actually does. And I guess becomes kind of irrelevant once you're at the level cap. Uh, I don't plan on having a really high level cap because I'm one person and I'm just having fun with this project. But a level cap of 50 or something like that would probably be the first one. I'd probably like level cap 5, one zone, and like cool stuff, and just that would probably be about the maximum I'll ever be able to get done on this. Um, so as far as how all of the actions work, okay, what you're looking at right here are all of the base attributes. Um, use a struct, which makes your life a lot easier, and I'll go into that. And there's one other thing I missed and I didn't even really know exists, which is a is called a function library. It's a function library, and I haven't really been using those at all. You can just make one, which I'm kicking myself for not taking advantage of that. Yeah, blueprint function library. So you can just have external, like a function, which would have really come in handy when it comes to the targeting system, because I, in many cases, need to be able to determine accurately uh, if somebody is targetable, and that function actually happens outside of in more than one case. So if I had just used the library correctly, I would have been able to just make a generic targeting function and been able to call that, and it would have been way better. So there's still stuff that I learned a lot while working on this, and that if I had a chance to go back, I could make it even better. I could even do an even better job this time around. I'd be using function libraries. I didn't use structs enough, although I did use structs. Like structs are a really huge thing. My only complaint about structs is how you access them is really clunky right now. It should be a little easier. And I'll actually show that because I'm going to open up this. Okay, so action base is the core action system. So there's an inventory base, which is the one that actually this is the icon that appears on your bar when you have an action base, an inventory thing. That's the thing that you click on. That's the thing that you use. But it calls upon this guy, which is a core entity that handles all of the things. You see, I haven't even done all of the uh explanations of everything that's here. I plan to actually clean up all of this and maybe even do that on a video as I'm cleaning it all up. But so there's like stuff that isn't being commented and stuff like that. This right here is a single entity, a single generic action entity that spawns on the character that's casting, creates the effect, and then determines whether or not the character can be have the cast on it. He starts off, and right here you actually see spawning. This is for like if it's a remote target, those abilities where you can plant something on the ground and it spawns an explosion or something like that. So that's what I'm determining here is is it a remote target location? And I get past all of this, and I get to the initial target setup. Well, how does the initial target setup work? Now you can see right here how structs are kind of awkward because they have this extra thing. You have to break the pin. They call it breaking the pin. That's just awkward. Why can't I just drag it out like I do with everything else and just get the variable? See, there's nothing here. Look, there's all these variables in my struct. Why can't I just... That's so weird because it doesn't work that way with everything else. Anyway, so now I get these giant things like hanging out everywhere. But that's not really that horrible. It's just annoying. But look at how big and awkward that is. Of course, there's this other thing you can do, which just kind of adds to it. I'm gonna do it right here. So like if you don't like doing it that way, you can do split struct pin. Boom. Okay. All right. All right. Let's get a few things on my struct. Just gotta just drag this monstrous elephant around and just so you know. Oh, I'm gonna have like 20 of these. I have 20 of them. All right. So that's just silly. That's just silly. Anyway, this right here is determining the remote target location. I actually use I spawn a dummy target, which is actually derived off of character base, but doesn't have any collision or anything like that. It spawns this like invisible dude, so to speak. Um, that then I spawn the effect around and everything like that. So it's kind of strange. So this can determine your initial target. It'll make the remote target marker the initial target. Alright, so it goes through all of this, determines if you have enough MP or SP. I like SP better because it's a generic thing because I don't want to split MP and TP or MP and Rage or all those things. I kind of like just having this is your action bar. This is how much you can do. Because there's too many strange things. Like in Final Fantasy XIV, I have TP when I'm a mage. My scholar has TP. My white mage has TP. But I can run around sprinting in PvP all day long, while everybody else, like if you're a tank who actually needs their TP, and you hit sprint, it just completely drains your TP to nothing, and you're like worthless. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know. And in games like World of Warcraft, they kind of do the same thing anyway. It's you know, if you're a rogue, you got energy. If you're a druid, you got mana. But it's sort of the same thing. I mean, you can just change the flavor and make the color of the bar different or whatever. Actually, kind of interesting. Just sort of presentation kind of a thing. But for right now, I'm just going with SP. The casting phase determines the amount of time that it takes to cast. I have you actually face your target. Uh, Once this is called, I actually have things hooked up through an event tick, which then all this stuff happens on the server, and then this checks out um, your casting time, how much time you have for casting. This over here like shows like your casting bar can be updated and everything like that. So a lot of the real, even though there's a lot of stuff going on here, because there's a lot of stuff like over here you can see the target must be casting. So this is a checkbox for if the target is currently casting something, then this ability can go off. Otherwise, the ability will fail. And over here, I have a thing where if the or the target currently has a status effect, can change the way the ability goes off. So over here, if the caster, because this is the very beginning, has a status effect, and I determine which one to look for and everything like that, or if the target does. So some abilities won't actually function unless the target has a status effect on it. So with that said, there's oh man, I wonder how long this video is going to end up being. There's no functionality currently, although I do plan to do like it changes the effect. So like in some cases, if somebody has a status effect on them, that makes them take more damage from a certain ability or something like that, increases the potency. So the meat of this is actually kind of inconspicuous, hanging out over here, is apply potency for duration is a macro. Okay, so duration means that the effect can just sit there and continually pump, like, and reapply effects, and it can be just like a thing sitting on the ground. Duration usually is matched with um, remote targeting. So this right here will fire off all of these functions, and then these functions determine the stats of the instigator, is the character that casted it. So like these are positive stats: modify HP, modify SP, and is marked as uh, recovery. And this one is beneficial. Beneficial means positive status effects. Positive status effects will use this mathematical formula, and then it, boom, modify status effects. Once the effect is placed on the character, that status effect will then will then have its own picture of the character's stats at the time of casting. So that adds this, which is part of character base. Character base ends up actually adding the effect himself based on the stats of the person who did the casting. Then you get messages that appear from all of that. Okay, so there's other things too. Now this is a bit of a sour topic for me, because one of my least favorite things of the PvP in these kinds of games is losing control of my character while having crowd control and things of that nature, while being beat to death, like having somebody just run into the room or an area, hammer of justice you, and then just like pop wings and murder you instantaneously right there, or a mage, frost uh, frost nova, and right into a deep freeze. You didn't even have a fucking chance, and then just murderizes you while you have no control over your character. Your trinkets on cooldown. So those are scenarios that, like, as a healer, uh, have always been things that just, especially if it continuously happens over again and over and over. The worst offender had to have been Warhammer Online. Early days Warhammer Online was just like rooted, stunned, rooted. It just drives me crazy. Like you'd get stunned and rooted every 5 seconds. Even worse, probably every couple of seconds. In this, there's a very explicit, if you take damage, it removes the crowd control. So here's a Frost Nova, which roots you, right? You get rooted. Now it's an 8-second root, but I can teleport out of it. Certain abilities are trinkets, so I can get out early. So it actually says Frostfoot remove, which is in effect that's the root. Um, Now I have an ability that kind of mimics a little bit of an ice block from Mage in World of Warcraft, which become immune to damage while greatly reducing the effects of healing and support on self for 8 seconds. Cannot perform actions while this is active. If I pop this move, I can't really take any damage. I got 8 seconds of basic invulnerability. It's pretty much an ice block. It's just to buy time. See, it does no damage at all. But now that it's gone, I took 43 damage from Frostbolt. Which now leads me into uh, this is the Pacify ability. Now, Pacify is sort of like Silence, but it's more generic in that you can pacify somebody who isn't a caster. So it's sort of performs the same thing. Even though right now the only class that I have is a caster, you can pacify targets that are not casters. Okay, so what does this do? If I take one of my longest to cast abilities, let's say I'm going to drop down a Blaze right here, I'm like, no, I really don't want that Blaze to go off. I pacified. See, now I can run around, but I've got 8 seconds of pacify, and I have to deal with that. You can still use trinket abilities, but pacify can't be trinketed out of. Certain actions are marked as trinkets, and there are ways to remove trinkets, and certain classes, support classes, will usually have the ability to remove things like pacify. So that leads into what I'm calling, this is the last part of the last detail about everything that's going on here, is I call it cooldown groups. Now you notice that I don't have a global cooldown, but I do have a special grouping system in place right now I think I'm gonna pop Cleric Stance for 50% healing. Pop that. Go to here, and then I'm gonna pop a Benediction on myself for maximum healing. I'm totally like, boom! Oh, that was a crit too. I can't even see the number. Um, that was like massive healing. Benediction being the most powerful heal will only work if somebody has Medica applied. So if I try to, I think I already explained this. So I don't have it. Benediction failed, so I ended up wasting all that SP or SP. Um, cooldown groups. Now you see how regen is rejuvenation. Cure 1 is invigoration. Blaze is fire. Fireball is fire. Burn is fire. Cast burn just for fun of it. See the cool. Now I'm gonna combustion. I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. Now you notice that combustion is flame. It's not the same cooldown group as burn. Fireball has its own cooldown group as well. See? So one of the things that when you're mixing matching and like making your own build, picking the abilities that you've unlocked. So there's 20 abilities here. Imagine there being like maybe 30 or 40 abilities per class. If you unlock all of them, what you do is you pick the ones that you want, and then you save it to a list, and then you can just like switch to this class. One character has all classes, just like Final Fantasy 14 and Skyforge. Uh, you can pick 20 of the ones that you want to use, and then one of the things that you want to pay attention to is the cooldown group. So Adloquium is its own thing. Refreshes is a super important ability, so there won't be too much overlap with something like Adloquium. But if you take a look at Invigoration, you'll notice that Medica doesn't have a cooldown. Cure 2 has a cooldown of 2 seconds. However, Cure 1 doesn't. So, no effect. However, if I pop Cure 2, notice that all Invigoration spells have a 2-second cooldown. So I can immediately pop a Cure 2 or go right immediately into this. If I pop a Frost Nova, I'm locked out of Frost for 10 seconds. If I drop a Blaze, I'm locked out of Fire for 10 seconds. So you really have to pay attention to these cooldown groups when you're making builds. Okay, so that's pretty much everything that's in place. The next things that I'm going to be working on will be, of course, like a chat window that's functional, options menu, character being able to equip armor and everything like that. I think the stats for armor is just going to be randomly generated. Um, inventory, like whatever you can carry and stuff like that. And then, of course, I want to try and get crafting and at least one crafting class in place before I start adding other combat classes. Um, and that's pretty much that. So this has actually come a lot further than I was kind of thinking it would go. Even though right now it's a little bit slow, the performance when you're just playing and you're not the server, it seems pretty good to me. Like I'm actually pretty curious to see like um, how this performs if I get more than maybe 8 people playing. So the idea on this is that it plays like an MMO, but it's really not. It's maybe you get a 32 or 64 person server and maybe one giant open zone, and there you go. Like so it's like the free to play or buy to play like MMO-ish kind of game where you have the ability to make mods for it. It's your own server with a password and only your buddies can jump in. Sort of like having your own Terraria or Minecraft server or something, but it plays like an MMO. I don't know. Maybe that's actually a really cool thing. Maybe that's something that would be neat to see. Maybe it already exists. I haven't seen any examples, but uh, so that's that. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll have more information and more updates on how I did everything, and uh, yeah. And if you can, check out the free demo. I'll put a link. I don't know how long that link will be available, Google Drive might freak out. I don't really have a good place to put it up. It's only like 200 megs, and you can actually run around and play this what's here right now and check it out. If you want to change your name, you have to type set name and then your name. All right, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and there will be more. There will be